Welcome to this edition of Faith in Action with myself, Robbie Ep1. It is great to have your company. Now, throughout Faith in Action, we're going to be talking about different ways we live our lives. What do we do? How do we do things? How do we do the things that God wants us to do? But also, how do we live our lives in everyday circumstances? What do we do with that? We'll have guests along the way. Today, though, it's just you and me. And I want to talk about new beginnings. And you might think that's a bit weird because actually New Year's Day has been and gone. We've had the 5 weeks of January. Why is it that January always feels so long? And we've had January, but actually that's the reason why I want to talk about new beginnings. Because it's after that kind of initial enthusiasm and excitement of new things and new year that we get ourselves all worked up about it. And we go through January and we come out the other side and we think, now what? I do it. I'm sure you do it as well. Now what? What do I do with my life? Or how do I apply what God has given to me in everyday life? And if I found anything out over the years of being a Christian, it is that it's okay to ask those questions. It's all right to wonder, what do I do with what God has called me to do? What has God called me to do? What are the goals that I have for my life for this year, and how achievable are they? When I was a kid, I used to want to be a fire engine. Not a fireman, a fire engine. I wanted to be in the fire truck because that was the exciting thing. I had no idea that there were people inside it. I just saw this big red truck with all the blue lights and I thought, I want to be one of those when I grow up. Not achievable. But what is achievable? What kind of goal do you want for this year for God to be able to use you in a way that He's not used you before? Now, throughout the series, we will be talking about various different aspects of our lives and various different aspects of Scripture and how we can apply that faith in action. And today, it's Proverbs. Proverbs is brilliant. If you go through Proverbs, 31 Proverbs, you can start at the beginning of January, finish at the end of January. Wow, what a great way to start the year. Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6, we know this very well. Okay? Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Submit your ways to Him and acknowledge Him in all you do. Varying different ways you can read that and varying different versions of it. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. That's not easy, is it? Easy to say. And you kind of sound really kind of secure in God when you say it. I'm going to trust in the Lord with all my heart. I'm not going to lean on my own understanding. In other words, I'm not going to do it my way. I'm going to do it His way. And it's brilliant. It's a brilliant way to start out this year, this month, this week, even this day. That today I'm going to trust God. And if you're anything like me, I guarantee what happens. You start that way, and then halfway through the day, you're suddenly leaning on your own understanding because we think that we can fix it quicker than God can. I'm going to go out on the limb here and say, actually, A, we can't, but B, we all do that anyway. So if you're in that position right now, like me, and you're going, I'm going to do this my way, do you know what? We could be friends because we're traveling the same road. But to actually trust God with all of our heart, even if it doesn't work for us, even if it doesn't fit, even if you feel that it's not exactly how you wanted it, that's a goal worth pursuing. That's something worth chasing and in the chase and in the want and in the desire to be there, that's where we get closer to God. Actually, before we started to shoot this, I wasn't going to talk about this, but many years ago, myself and my wife, our 2 children were born very, very, very prematurely. And I remember when our son was born, we had lost 2 children before that. And I'm not telling you this story so you can have pity. I'm telling you this story because it was a real moment for me. And our son was in special care baby unit, and he was fighting for his life. And I was trying to get on with everyday life, because actually this was long term. This was not a short thing. So we still had to get on with working and paying the bills and getting out and doing the stuff, even though he was in the hospital. He was in the best possible place he could be. And I remember I was working for a friend of mine at the time. I was a salesman, and I was working, and I was out in this town, and I was walking the streets, and I met somebody from church who said, "Oh, we're praying for you and your wife, and we want to stand with you." And I was very grateful for that. And then they said something rather strange. And they said, "How's your prayer life?" How's your prayer life? And I thought, how do I answer that truthfully and honestly? What can I say about something like that? And I remember, and this is going back 32 years, I remember my response was, "Watch my feet." And this lady looked at my feet and said, "What am I looking at?" And I took a step, and then another step, and another step. And I turned back to her and said, "Every step is a prayer. Every breath is a prayer." Because my life was consumed by my son, who was fighting for his life. And all I had was an ability to walk and say, "God, in everything I do today, I want to trust you." Did I think I could change things? Yeah, at times I did, but of course I couldn't. But if I learned anything, I learned to trust him with all my heart. And lean not on my own understanding. See, my understanding at the time was, why God? Why? And I wonder how many of you are going through a why God moment right now. Why me? Why my family? Surely, God, you're bigger than my circumstances. Why? Why me? And believe you me, myself and my wife and our extended family and so many friends around the world were saying, "Why Robbie and Lynn? Why again?" And here's the thing. I didn't have the answer to that. I don't know why. I don't know why God takes us through one thing and another couple not. I don't know why people suffer and others don't. I don't know why there's sickness in some families and there isn't in others. But I do know that when we trust God with all our heart, the same God for all of us is available to every one of us. That becomes faith in action. That becomes what we've learned and walked, and how we've allowed people to disciple us and to get involved in our lives and teach us and train us. It becomes something that we go, "I can trust him." And if there's anything for this podcast I want, is I don't want it to become a preach. I really don't. And the production team are going, "Really? I don't want that." I want it to be life. I want to be able to say to you guys, we can have faith in action each and every day. So what's the end of the story when it comes to our children? Well, for our son, very premature. Our daughter, even more premature than that. But in this case, this scenario, every breath, every step is a prayer. Well, our son's 32 now, married and living a great life. He's an incredible guy. And our daughter has just turned 30. And she had an even bigger fight for life. Her story's for another day. It doesn't have to be something that big. Faith in action, we think that we have to have the big miracles. We have to have that massive thing. But I believe there are miracles happening in our lives every day. The small things, the conversation bits, being there for somebody else, that prompt that God drops something into your heart that says, call that person you've not spoken to for years. Give them a call. Faith in action. A few years ago, God did exactly that with me and dropped somebody into my heart to call them. And I thought, really? Not that I didn't like the person, I didn't want to call them. It was just, I hadn't spoken to them for a long time. Probably years. And I thought, no, I'm going to do this. And it took a bit of time to get the number. And it took a bit of time for us to actually connect. And when we did, I said on the phone, I said, hey, I just want to thank you for something you did when I was 17 years of age. And I'm in my 60s now. And he started to cry on the other end of the phone. I said, is everything okay? He said, yeah. He said, recently I've been wondering whether my life was worth anything and whether I'd had any impact on anybody. We don't know what people are going through. But I've learned a lesson. And the lesson is, if God drops somebody in my heart, then actually I'm going to do something about it. And I'm going to email them and say, hey, or I'm going to text them. We have no excuse anymore, guys. We're constantly connected with people. And all you got to do is pick your phone up and say, hey, thinking about you today, you all right? That's enough. What about faith in action when you're out shopping? I hate shopping. I hate grocery shopping. As a matter of fact, when myself and my wife go grocery shopping, she goes, I'm shopping, you're pushing the trolley, okay? That's it. Because it's something we don't like doing. But I wonder what it's like for the people working in the supermarket. And you think, that's not faith in action. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. When we load onto that conveyor belt and we start to go through and we hear the beep, 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 and we say to the person, hey, how you doing? How's your day been? You make them laugh, you make them smile, you make them feel that they're worth something. It's not always about the big things. It's about trusting God for whatever He has for us to do today. You think, but I want the big goal. Yeah, sure, the big goal will come. But what about the small one? What about the small goal first? You might think, I don't have a small goal. Well, what was the last thing that God asked you to do? And here's the nasty question. Have you done it? Oh, hold on. Now he's getting a bit, yeah. Because when God asks us to do something, He's waiting for us to do that. And you might think He's preaching again. I'm not trying to preach. I'm just trying to say, living by faith is easier than we think. Sure, the difficult things and the hard things, the big medical things, the circumstances of losing jobs, they're big, they're massive things, and it takes a lot to live by faith in that. But when we start living by faith in the small things, then we grow into having that security in the bigger things. Someone once said that using your faith is like muscles. You can tell, I work out, don't I? Yeah, no. I can't remember the last time I went on a run, and I can't remember the last time I got on a push bike to do any exercise. That's what I've got to deal with, okay? But here's the thing. Somebody once said that using your faith is like using your muscles. The more you use them, the fitter and stronger they become. And I wonder if the same can be said about how we work in what God has called us to do, how we act in those moments of faith and action, the small thing. Allowing somebody in a shop to feel worth it. Letting somebody cut in front of you in line, and you might think that's not faith. Yes, it is. Because you're putting somebody before yourself. You're doing something that actually inconveniences you and could actually help them. What about things like paying it forward? Ooh. Ever done that? Ever done that before? Pay it forward? I've done it a few times. I haven't done it lots. I've done it a few times where I've gone, the next person, I know the coffee people, and I say, the next person that comes up for the coffee, take it for it now. It's on me. And I normally pay over there, only a few, like a $5 instead of $4.60 or whatever, just in case they add a bit of extra, so that the next person walks in, they get blessed because somebody else has paid their coffee. Done it before recently, and I'm not doing this so as you think, he's a goody boy. It's not. I was going up to pay a bill. I saw a friend of mine and I went, I'll pay for their lunch. So that when they go to pay for their lunch, it's already done. And I'm gone. They didn't even know it until they went to pay for it. They said, oh, it's all paid for. Bless them. That's faith in action. That's the beginning of the small seeds as we look to others to do something different and allow God to use us. This is a UCB Ireland production, and here at UCB Ireland, we see this every day. We see faith in action every day. The people who work with us, incredible people who love the Lord, who are so intent on making sure the gospel gets out there. And then the people who read Word for Today, or the people who listen to our radio services, and the people who will connect with Prayer Line or go to our social media and they comment and say thank you. I had an email recently from somebody who listens to UCBI Worship, which is our 24/7 365 praise and worship station, and it was just a very, very small email saying thank you for this radio station. It has saved my life. That only happened recently. I have no idea who they are, other than we've got a first name on an email. I've no idea what their circumstances are. I've no idea. We're just obedient to what God said do, and we did it, and He does the rest. That's easy, Rob. You work in this industry. Yeah, I do. And it's always been my heart's desire to do this. But where do you work? How can you make a difference? What can you do that changes somebody's life? And you're not putting a flag in the ground that says, look at me. You're doing it so that somebody else can be blessed in such a way that you have no control over it. You're stepping out in faith for what God will do beyond you. Some 18 months ago, maybe actually longer than that, long time longer than that, I was in my favorite coffee shop and we were talking about youth. I was talking to the barista about youth, and we were talking about what they're faced with today. What the youth of any country is faced with today. And this person was saying that they were leaving the barista job to go and work in schools, teaching of the dangers of addiction. And I'm going, wow, this is big. And this girl is only like in her very early 20s. And she's going to be with teenagers, 17, 18. And she said, no. I'm going to be talking to 12, 10, 13, 14-year-olds. I said, about what? Now, here's the thing, and please don't get offended by this. She said they have seen everything, done everything, and encountered everything that you could possibly imagine because it's available. So I'm standing in this coffee shop, and this girl is explaining to me about what she's doing with these kids. And I'm thinking, in my head, I'm thinking, God, what's the church doing about this? Point number one. I want to say sorry about that. Because actually, in that moment, it was like God took a cricket bat and whacked me over the head about it and said, you have a national platform. What are you doing about it? Oh boy. I stood in this coffee shop, and in that moment, I decided that UCB Ireland would launch a youth radio station that was a safe haven for our youth across this nation. And it took years to do it, not because we were slow to do it, but because I'm way too old to do a youth radio station. We had to make sure the right people were in the right place to actually do this. And a year ago, we launched Full Access. Why do we call it Full Access? Because we believe everybody should have full access to Jesus. It's that simple. It's for a generation, by a generation. It's a step of faith. That's what it is. It's faith in action. How will it succeed? That's not my problem. My job is to do it. God's job is to increase it. So what about you where you are? As I get to a stage where I'm going to close off this podcast, how can you take Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, and apply that to faith in action today? I would suggest that you don't try and climb Mount Everest first off, that you take small steps in it, that you trust God with what He's asked you to do, and you do it. Not in your own strength, but in the strength that He gives you. And if that's looking after your neighbor next door, that's faith in action. Until next time, take care. God bless you. God bless. Bye-bye.